This is Josiah Plays Tyranny. Okay, time to talk to Lantry with all of his new dialogue options that he's now got. Now that we advanced a little further in the game, he's actually got a lot of stuff to say, instead of before when he didn't have much to say. So it's Lantry talk time.
One moment, my friend. Just let me finish this thought.
We've recently found out that Lantry's basically a drug dealer. He let us try some of his drugs. I mean, inks, quote unquote. We're almost to tier 4 loyalty with him as well, which is cool. Ending his note with a flourish, Lantry licks the tip of the quill, pausing to taste it a second the third time before tucking the pen in a holster on his sleeve. So, what's on your mind? Do you want to discuss matters of the present, or would you prefer a more scholarly rant? Let's just discuss current matters.
Of course. How can I help?
You know anything about the region we're in?
Vendrian's Well is the southern end of the realm of Apex. Used to be the remote vineyard and elk hunting grounds of Apex's richest. They use the term well since all the rivers roll down from the ring of mountains and leave the soil sprouting year-round.
Okay, that makes sense.
Houses Vendrian, Palox, and Tarkus all had reclusive estates out here back before the war. I think that's why the Scarlet Chorus had good recruiting success first time through. One thing to die for your village, another to die for your master's favorite elk-ridden forest. Of course. How can I help?
I have some questions for you.
I am nothing if not a semi-reliable font of knowledge. What did you want to discuss?
I'd like to know more about you. Me? Well, fine, but I'm not a very fascinating subject. I study interesting people, enough to know I'm not one of them. What's your story? Tell me the origins of Lantry. Someday, someone half your age will ask you to sum up your life, and you'll realize what an odious request that is. Well, where to start? I grew up in Sunder. I was born right after independence from the realm of Stalwart. So, yeah, do the math, and you'll realize I'm old. In a treaty that ended with the firm stipulation that Sunder chose to leave, and that Stalwart did not lose a civil war, the Free City of Sunder marks 347 TR as its year of independence. He's pretty spry for 84. Wow, Lantry's 84 years old. My parents were harbor hands. My mother never returned from a voyage, and my father lost his mind to infection and decided to sell me to the School of Ink and Quills. Ah, yeah, the old sold by your father. You know how it is. We all know how it is. How much were you worth? I have, like, very little fear with Lantry. Remain silent. Second thought, I don't much care. Any other family? Irrelevant. If they exist, they're as strangers. Family ties are severed when joining with the sages, at least in principle. The school has had its share of favoritism for blood relatives. As a novice, I was assigned to the Dovecotes, where I learned how to raise and groom birds to carry missives, and most of my early tomes were on that subject. 10 years and several tomes later, someone decided I was ready to be welcomed into the inner circle and shown the ways of magic. And since then, I've spent a great deal of time in field study, which I suppose readied me for life after the fall of the Vellum Citadel. Well, as much as anything could ready one for the strangeness of these days. So really, what's your story? So he's not telling us everything. What do you mean by that? If I had 3 fear with Lantry, I could say something special. But I don't. But I have a lot of subterfuge. I know you're smarter than you act. Extend me the same courtesy. No, we learned that Verse and Beric are actually brother and sister. Well, half brother and sister, Saito. That's what we learned. That's what their deal is. Lantry strokes his beard, leaving flecks of sepia among his white whiskers. I was on the take from the voices of Narat, or at least an agent of his sent me to the School of Ink and Quill 30 years back. It'd be years later until I made the connection to the Archon. Most people think the war began 3 years ago, but the voices of Narat had his hands in things sooner than that. I was part of that early invasion, an eager kid happy to accept a 30-year assignment that comes with an education. I am dreadfully unamused by this. So, what else aren't you telling me? You read the Edict of Fire. You were the messenger of Kairos' judgment on my work. It was about then that I decided I'd need to take an interest in your skein. Is it skein or skein? Your skein. Your skein. I'm going with skein. Your skein. In truth, I am deeply curious about any who have lived as vessels to Kairos' most supreme magic. When I heard you were proclaiming a second edict, I had to find a way for us to meet. Being tied up in a prisoner camp was not the intended plan. So you advocating surrender to Kairos was the end of your long plan? Yes and no. When I first left, I was just happy to be getting educated by the sages on someone else's rings, and my orders were simply to listen and report. As the time drew near, my commands were to win them over, a little at a time, to the notion of surrender. Well, that didn't work out very well. But I failed. Yeah, you did. The elders of the school grew defiant, and the militant minds won out. These are tearsmen, after all. I didn't deliver the surrender, and it took the Overlord's edict to end what I was sent to do. Thank you for telling me. Now, no more secrets, understood? I will endeavor to earn your trust as best I can. Sorry to have given you reason for doubt. That doesn't help me, Saito. Temu, 1982. How you doing? Let's speak of something else. Me? Well, fine, but I'm not a very fascinating subject. I study interesting people. Enough to know I'm not one of them. Were you born Lantry, or did you take that name on joining the School of Ink and Quill? Most sages take a new name when they join the school. But for me, the transition was difficult at first. I stuck to my old commoner name and then just never got around to picking some highfalutin name like Sage Apophysis or Sage Dangling Participle. Sage Dangling Participle would be a... Why do we not get to have a party member named Dangling Participle? I mean, come on. What's up, DP? How your participle dangling today? You know? Is this your true skein? Did you always want to be a sage? I cannot imagine doing anything different. I suppose in my youngest days I yearned for battle and glory like most boys I knew. Having now seen how short a soldier's life can be, I look back on that old calling, that old mindset, and laugh. You mentioned raising birds earlier. Do you think you'll go back to doing that? At some point, yes. Good birds are needed to keep the missives moving through the tiers. I set all my best birds to flight before the edict. Turn of phrase. He named a bird Turn of Phrase. Turn, like the type of bird, turn, of phrase, like the phrase, turn of phrase. That's an amazing name. I mean, he's a writer, and he named his bird Turn of Phrase. Constant Call and the rest. They're out there somewhere, and maybe when this is over, I'll summon them back and start a new dovecote. How do you feel about Kairos? I've seen what tiny despots, merchant cabals, and mage guilds can inflict in the names of all sorts of righteous causes. I will take the rule of Kairos over the tyranny of every idiot on Tyratus. Yeah, honestly, after reading the first section of the guidebook, I'm feeling more like Kairos' rule is actually a good thing, and that it would be much better for everybody in the tiers if they were under Kairos' peace. Because Kairos' laws and system of government, that's the part that I read about in the guidebook, sounds pretty fucking good, actually. I mean, the Archons that he has supported under him are willing to do a lot of evil shit in order to keep order, but like the system itself seems pretty good. Kairos actually wants the people to be protected. He wants people to have, I mean, you know, he's got this whole socialism thing going on where like it's Kairos' promise to the people that they will not starve to death, that they will not be killed by anyone except for you can only be killed by your own Archon. No matter where you live, there's some Archon that rules over you. And only that Archon or their duly appointed representatives acting under their orders can kill you. And they can only kill you if you're breaking the laws. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be under the law. Beyond that, you're supposed to be protected from anybody else, any kind of bandits, any kind of criminals, any kind of other rulers or Archons. And they said if you don't have enough food, they give you food, and they give you an education and teach you a job. They've got like job training as like a right for everybody in his empire and stuff. And healthcare too. It mentioned the healthcare too. I mean, everybody in Kairos' empire gets hooked the fuck up. All you have to do to be under Kairos' peace is obey. You have to swear fealty to Kairos and agree to obey him. If you do that, Kairos is going to take care of you. So it actually sounds pretty good. But then there's the fact that in the course of conquering everybody, they do a bunch of evil shit. And a lot of his Archons do a lot of evil shit. I'll see you later, Temu1982. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for chatting, and I'll see you next time. Nilfgaard is pretty bad, though. They're pretty bad. Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, you can't say that Kairos is just a blanket good guy, or good woman, or good genderless being, because the edicts are pretty bad. I mean, you're obliterating hundreds, if not thousands, of fucking people with a powerful magical spell just because they rebelled against you. That's not something a good person does. But I mean, actual life under the laws of Kairos, once all the warring and stuff is done, sounds like it's pretty decent, actually, according to what I read in the guidebook. Let's speak of something else.
I am nothing if not a semi-reliable font of knowledge. What did you want to discuss?
My voice sounds nothing like his voice. I'd like to discuss arcane matters.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of Kairos' edicts? Kairos has cast many over the ages, and to my knowledge has never worded two edicts exactly the same. Edicts defy our understanding of magic. Kairos' magic works over vast distances, over indefinite durations, and no Archon or mere mage can counter the force of an edict. What can you tell me of edicts in general? I explain it to my students like this. A spell is to an edict as a drop of rain is to a hurricane. Edicts and spells are both magical cantrips, but differ in intensity by orders of magnitude. Edicts are almost commands to Taratus that must be carried out until the instructions allow for the magic to end. If Kairos wants a plague until next Judge's Day, expect copious buboes until next Judge's Day. I don't know what buboes are. Nothing has ever dispelled an edict. Nothing outside of the edict's own sunset clause, as I like to think of them. I'm curious about a specific edict. Of course, ask away. Any thoughts on the Edict of Execution cast on the Vendrian's Valley? That's the one that we just discharged. It seems like the Archons were about to kill each other, and the threat of mutual destruction was about all Kairos had left. I imagine fear is the only way to get someone like the Voices of Nerat to follow orders, and the Edict certainly did whip them into action. Lado says buboes are effectively swollen regions filled with bacterial mass. Oh wow, that's lovely. Bubonic plague. Okay. Okay. Those sound gross. I don't want buboes to be involved in anything that I'm involved with. What do you know of the Edict of Stone? That's the one that they did to Azure in order to kill Cairn. The Edict of Stone ravaged the realm of Azure. The upheaval of earth and rock turned the rolling plains into a craggy steppe known as the Stone Sea. Have you read about the Stone Sea? Stone Sea is the name given to what remains of the land of Azure after Kairos' Edict of Stone devastated the landscape. Once a rolling landscape of winding rivers and fertile plains, tectonic shifts have altered the landscape, choking rivers, collapsing roads, and altering the landscape for hundreds of leagues. Hundreds of leagues. Whatever the fuck a league is. Since the edict was directed at the traitorous Archon of Stone, it would seem the upheaval of Azure was a secondary consequence, though I imagine little of what Kairos does is unintentional. What do you know of the Edict of Fire? You know, the one that I read that destroyed your library where you lived. Sorry, bro. I know that you warned us. You're welcome. I'm alive today because of you, as are so many of my brothers and sisters, and I'm most certain you were not ordered to warn us, so all the more reason to honor your decision. Lantry bows deeply, his face blushing when he returns to standing. You're welcome, Lantry. You're welcome. I was not instructed to warn you and did so at my own peril. Never forget that. Why would that give fear? That should give favor. I'm basically saying, dude, I'm the one that chose to save your life, even though it wasn't what I was supposed to do. The league is about 3 miles. Different when talking about nautical leagues. Oh, nautical leagues, like leagues under the sea or whatever. Glare silently. I know. God, I want to do an all glare silently playthrough. I really do. I might do that on my second playthrough, because my second playthrough is going to be the fucking hardcore soldier guy that's going to have the high athletics and be really intimidating and stuff. Maybe he'll glare silently every time, unless there's an athletics check. If there's an athletics check, he'll do it. Otherwise, probably glare silently. Given the destruction involved, a warning seemed the humane thing to do. A most noble sentiment. The edict had its intended effect. It crushed the will of the school and scattered the sages to the wind. I'm glad it brought an end to the conflict, and, thanks to your warning, without further loss of life. Of course, ask away. Can you tell me of the Edict of Storms? That's the one that was done to Stalwart and what ended up making Barrack the way he is. The Edict of Barrack's shit stink. The Edict of Storms turned the once forested lands of Stalwart into a wind-swept wasteland. They call it the Blade Grave now, since only the iron and bronze armaments remain. Hurricane breezes, rust winds, and relentless lightning have destroyed the housing and farmlands. The Blade Grave is the name given to what remains of the realm of Stalwart after its ruination when Kairos proclaimed the Edict of Storms upon the lands. The magical storms struck the disfavored and unbroken armies during the height of their engagement. Now most of what remains is a blighted landscape of discarded armor and weapons and high winds of rust and human dust. No, I'm pretty sure that Lantry is in the game no matter what, because he's one of the core companions, and you might not even go to the Vellum Citadel during the conquest, so I'm pretty sure even if you didn't warn them, they would have had some other excuse for why he survived. Like, he was out gathering wood that morning, you know, like in fucking Lone Wolf. The Black Plague was not just one plague, but three caused by Yersinia pestis. Bubonic Plague was actually the most mild of the three. Okay, cool. Good to know. Good to know. Let's speak of something else. Hold on, that's all for now. I just thought of something. Maybe I should be having this conversation at the top of the spire. Because we've noticed before in other people's conversations that sometimes other companions will interject if they're there and say something while you're talking to the one companion. So maybe we should be up there next to Barrack. Well, I guess Barrack's the only one that's... Oh, he's over here hanging out next to Tycon, huh? I guess Barrack's the only other companion we have. Right? I've got 3, 4... Yeah, there's 2 more. There's the Beast Woman and there's Siren, that's right. So Barrack's the only... But maybe if we're standing next to Barrack while we're having this conversation, he may... Oh, hold on. Barrack's got something to say now that we kicked him out of the party. This spire allows for such a long and uninterrupted view. Barrack glances over the edge with hesitation and then shivers. I find restraint and limitations more to my liking, though it is nice to feel a breeze running through these plates of solid rust.
My Lord Binder, you have something which requires my attention? What can I do for you?
Suit up. He's always suited up, though. We'll talk later. Alright, so let's just talk. Let's just continue the conversation.
One moment. I am nothing, and I'd be happy to...
What if I ask him about the Edict of Storms now that Barrack's nearby? No, he doesn't say anything different. Okay. Do edicts work on the same arcane principles as spellcraft and other magic?
Edicts are the strongest manifestation of magic we know, and they seem to violate all other lesser phenomena. No dispel cantrip has ever dented or abated an edict. Even archons with powers of great durability cannot shrug off their effects. Just look at Cairn.
Just look at Cairn.
Now, what I find curious, edicts can flex a little. Or so my studies suggest this is the case. Take the Edict of Storms. While the day it was proclaimed was the most violent, the actual radius of the storm has changed over time. But most will have none of my hypotheses on this matter.
Edicts can flex. Good to know. Septicemic plague is when you get organs basically melting inside of you. That sounds bad. Sounds like it's bad for you. Dude died from mass septicemia. It was the foulest thing you've ever seen or smelt. That sounds gross. Sounds gross. Fine, I'll take the bait. What's your conjecture about edicts?
So, in my studies, some edicts resolve some problem of the overlords and then vanish into history. But the edicts that linger around, almost all of them begin to widen. Their effects become more intense.
That's interesting.
Here's the intriguing part. The older the edict, and the more that's written about it, the more the reports of that edict get more dire over time.
Okay, tell me more. I can tell him he doesn't know what he's talking about. Perhaps edicts have a life of their own once set in motion.
Something to that effect, at least. I contend that edicts are powered by fear. Fear of Kairos helps fuel the casting, and fear of the edict feeds the magic, sustaining it, and, if enough people fear it, even growing it a bit.
Powered by fear? Huh. That's a strange idea. Handrails are for noobs. Rule by fear is certainly Kairos' way.
Intellectual honesty demands that I study the matter more. If I'm correct, the more people fear and obsess over an edict, the stronger it becomes. Anyway, another study for another time.
Let's speak of something else.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of the magic of the Archons? I've studied many of the Archons for many years. Compared to the other sages, I'm an expert on the subject, which is sad because I feel like I've still so much to learn. How does the magic of Archons work? The Archons all have magical powers that are intuitive. When the voices of Nerat pulls out someone's mind, or Graven Ash protects his soldiers, that magic isn't a signed spell or ritual. To them, it's closer to flexing one's hand. Archons are the... what's the word for it? Axiom of magic? The root of magic? Spell pioneers? While every guild or school of magic will ascribe a different name to the theory, all mages inevitably stumble upon an inescapable fact. Only the Archons can will magic into being. Everyone else can only cast magic by invoking the sigil of an Archon that has come before. I already read this, didn't I? Oh, we're gonna read this whole thing anyway. None know how the Archons do their magic. It seems to be different with each Archon, but theory suggests that once an Archon starts to invoke their powers, anyone else who comes after that Archon could, with the proper knowledge, tap into that power with the proper sigil and know-how. This observed law has given rise to a common question from young students. Could one guess at a sigil of an Archon not yet born, or not remembered by history, or simply unknown to the caster? and successfully cast a spell? Experienced mystics would tell you this is impossible, for they know that it's not enough to just mimic the gestures of a sigil. One must have willful, conscious knowledge of the Archon and the intended power being channeled. This whole thing with the Archons and the magic is so weird, like I don't really get it. It seems like a strange magic system. I mean, I think we're going to learn more as we go through the game and the mystery will be cleared up some, but why do the Archons have the power that they have? And where does that power ultimately come from? And how come you're able to mimic it with sigils? Like, after Archons have done a power, then other people can mimic it with sigils, but they can't beforehand. But why? And are there gods, or a god, or is there any kind of divine beings, or any kind of... We don't know any of this about this setting. I don't know if everybody got really drunk at once, it would render Kairos impotent. Probably not. Casting it a day after warning should make it much more powerful. That makes sense, Inanimus. Sato says it seems like Archons serve as anchors and channels for magic into this world. Yeah, that makes sense. You wonder if an Archon can use sigil magic to cast a spell of another Archon? Probably, Nox. Probably. What does axiom mean? Doesn't that just mean like an axiom? Isn't that like just like a saying, like a true saying or something? I mean, I've heard it used in that sense before. I'm sure this analogy is off in many ways, but I see Archons as the mothers of original magic, and everyone else is just imitating them. To confuse things a bit, some Archons learn to cast other spells in the same fashion as us. Well, there you go. That answered your question, Noxmoo, right there. Some Archons learn to cast other spells in the same fashion as us lesser mages. If you are as important as an Archon, you learn quick that all knowledge is power. I've studied many of the Archons for many years. Compared to the other sages, I'm an expert on the subject, which is sad because I've already read this. Are all Archons loyal to Kairos? Officially, yes. In actuality, no. Those with a true gift for magic always come to the attention of Kairos. A few manage to evade attention for a bit. The School of Tides was founded by one such uncontrollable, but these are history's exceptions. The axiom is effectively a self-evident statement. Give me an example. Oh, see? See? She's interjecting into our conversation. Now, I want to know, would that have happened if she wasn't in the party, but we were standing up here next to her? Occulted Jade, Archon of Tides, never bowed to Kairos, and it's said she survived the assassin sent to silence her. It makes her flight from Kairos before the war all the more troubling. We knew her as this symbol of strength, but when threatened, her weaker nature won. When we write biographies of the Archons, we often refer to them as exarchs in their formative years before stepping into their prime. But officially, Kairos is supposed to grant all titles of Archon. It's quite the faux pas to self-appellate. Yeah, don't self-appellate. That'll make you blind. Exactly why Jade insisted on calling herself Archon of Tides. She didn't need Kairos' approval to wear the title she deserves, and I know she loved the fact that doing so must have annoyed Kairos. Yeah, we get it. Occulted Jade was super cool. Something assumed to be universally true, either implicitly or out of convenience. Axiom is what is accepted without proof to avoid circular logic. The one that always comes to mind is the Hippocratic oath that a physician should do no harm. How is that an axiom, though? I mean, that was literally just one dude's opinion of what a physician should be like, and basically all physicians since then have decided that they were going to go with it. I mean, just learning the skills and knowledge of being able to treat the human body's illnesses shouldn't, like, have to make you some sort of saint that... I mean, why do doctors have to do no harm? They don't have to do no harm. It's literally just an idea. It's just a concept. I might as well say that all human beings should do no harm. Hell, if that's the thing, why are we restricting that to doctors? Anonymous says axiom is what you build theorems upon, the atomic block of logic. Okay. Assumed to be universally true by physicians. Axioms sound kind of stupid to me. I don't like the idea of assuming anything is universally true. I've studied many of the Archons. Oh, we've already read this multiple times, okay. How is an Archon born, or bred? I think we all dream of one day waking up and being an Archon. Given some of the madmen and loons that have exhibited mystical greatness, it can seem unfair that the rest of us can't do it. I can say with confidence, Archons aren't born, they become. Raven Ash is a good study of this. Before he was Archon of War, he was a successful commander, each victory more daring and glorious than the next. Somewhere along the way, his leadership took on mystical qualities. Okay, now this is interesting information. This is new information. Up to this point, I assumed Archons were born that way. But learning that they just become that suddenly changes everything. That means anybody could become an Archon. That means we could become an Archon. That's pretty cool. There are plenty of physicians who don't give a tiniest of shits about not doing harm. Popular conception holds that one who fails that axiom is not a physician. I was just about to say, no true Scotsman. Yeah. Worshipping cows is good equals universally true. True, Nox, that's true. Worshipping cows is good is definitely an axiom. Well, I know that backwards it's Moixa. So that's important information. The Graven Ash we know today can reach out and protect his soldiers from harm. But maybe at first he could just protect those near him. I wouldn't know for certain, but all will attest that he didn't have this power his whole life. Okay. So they can get stronger and more powerful over time. So maybe Kairos is just the oldest and most powerful Archon. Let's speak of something else.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of spellcraft?
I've forgotten more than most bloodchanters have ever learned. What do you want to know?
Can you teach me anything?
I think you know all I can teach you.
What sort of magic did the sages teach you? Sage Sindon tutored me in the traditional sigils, those of preservation, concealment, and healing, as derived from the bygone archons of Tharavis, Fading Wrath, and the Orphan Midwife. The preservation magic is largely functional, sealing parchment, binding books, that sort of thing. All of us chroniclers learn concealment magic, as our ideal method would be to study events without contaminating the decisions being made. As for the healing magic, many of us modern sages study this a great deal. The school has a shoddy reputation among the common folk. I figured if they knew us as healers and caregivers, maybe we start to change opinions. Seems like a good point. Everybody loves a healer. Healing, now that's a noble craft to study. True, but given how accident-prone I can be, I think the person that benefits most from my magic is me. But certainly, the most gratifying spells I know are the ones that ease pain and suffering. They make me feel slightly useful. I think healing magic would be the most powerful magic you could have if you were going to have magic in the real world. You're like, whoa, no, but blasting things and blowing shit up with magic would be more powerful. Not really, because what are you going to use that for? Unless you're going to go be in war. I mean, there's so many limited situations where you're going to really be able to use blowing shit up magic in the real world. But you could use healing magic all the damn time and you could make ludicrous amounts of money. And you could use it constantly, and everybody would totally love you for it, and you'd get paid, and you could basically be one of the richest, most important, most famous people in the world if you had literal healing magic in the real world. You could start a giant cult that would all, like, worship you as a god. Whereas if you could just make shit blow up, everybody like, whatever, we can do that with bombs already, who cares? I would like to have healing magic. What is a procedural axiom? What can you tell me about signing magic? Scholars don't have a good word for what Archons do when they cast magic. Couldn't tell you how Graven Ash casts his protection over his soldiers, nor would I know how Bleeding Mark consciously decides to move through a shadow. But when us mere mages want to cast a spell, we do so by signing the sigil of an Archon that previously discovered the magical phenomenon in question. It's debated whether Archons create new magic, or just discover magic that was waiting for us. But such questions seem impossible to answer while sober. Let's speak of something else.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
Are you familiar with the Old Walls?
Familiar is a relative term. I think I know more than most, but it's a subject of mystery, even to the scholars. Though, I must admit, in addition to my reading, I've ventured into the Old Walls on occasion, and soiled many undergarments in the process.
He's ventured into the Old Walls. That is forbidden. As a Fatebinder charged with upholding the law, I sentence you to death. I kick him off the top of the spire. Do you know who built them or why? We can only seem to agree that they were built. There's no consensus as to the who of it. We generally use the old realms or older realms when describing the folk that must have done all this construction ages ago. That's also where the young realms got their name indirectly. Azure, Stalwart, and all of them are older than you and I, but compared to the Old Walls, they're babies. As for the why, that's anybody's guess. I've always assumed it's an ancient road and aqueduct network. If you just needed to fence off your neighbors, you wouldn't have such elaborate, expansive masonry on the inside. What sorts of things have you seen in the old walls? Aside from the terrifying Bane? Well, every section of the old walls has its own jaw-dropping architecture. I've seen bridges that move when someone is near, mystical barriers that must have been standing for eons. And I've seen remains, so many remains. A lot of them sages from centuries past, poor hapless drifters that must have been desperate for shelter. What fascinates me most are the symbols found on the interior architecture. I can't help but think that if we shared notes with other Old Walls explorers, we might someday decipher the meanings. And that's exactly what Kairos doesn't want to happen. I have a feeling that Kairos' power is tied into the Old Walls and the Spires somehow. And that's why he's forbidden anybody to go in there, because if people learned the secrets, then somebody might be able to get the power and be able to challenge him. And maybe that's what this game is about. We know going into the Old Walls is going to be a thing in the game, because they already said so before the game came out. They're basically going to be the dungeons of the game. Kairos forbids exploration of the Old Walls. Did the Tearsmen have similar laws? In typical Younger Realms fashion, entering the Old Walls was never illegal, but plundering them was. The logic being, that which rests in the Old Walls belongs to your local ruler, not you. The noble houses made a point of buying up anything that came out of the Old Walls. Plenty of ancient stuff in there, but sometimes you find stuff that's just a generation old, left by the last fool trying to search for treasure. If you've been through the Old Walls, then you must be familiar with the Bane. More so than is healthy. I've seen one rip a young scribe in half with its nebulous talons, and I've run away from more than my fair share of angry Bane. That sounds redundant. They all seem angry. Heard all sorts of theories on the Bane. Heard they were dead mages, the nightmares of Archons come to life. One sage believes they're Kairos' children. Guess if you have enough ink and parchment, you can crap out any dumb idea. Nice. I profess to know very little and stick to what can be observed. They appear cunning, but lacking language, and they have animal-like qualities, but they seem drawn only to magic and commotion. Food and water seem irrelevant to them. So they're evil magic-sucking spirit things. Let's speak of something else.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of the Spires? History used to say that the older realms built the Spires. These days you'll hear children repeating that Kairos built them. Guess that's the new history? There are spires all over Tyratus, though I don't know the count, maybe 40 or so. 5 of them are in the tiers. Generally, the spires follow the Old Walls, often occurring at junctions in the old masonry. The Mountain Spire is a notable exception. The other spires in the tiers connect to the Old Walls, but the Mountain Spire is just freestanding, a sore thumb in the middle of the tiers. Oh, that's the one that we're on now, is the Mountain Spire. So this is the... I think this is the one spire to control them all. This is like the control center for the spires, I think. That's what that device is for. That's why when we used the device, it, like, gave us a vision of the other spire or whatever. Any ideas to their purpose? Lightning rod, a perch from which to survey the lands below, signposts for a society of folks that flew like birds. On this matter, I have only conjecture and flights of fancy. The best hypothesis I've heard is that they were all built at the sites of major settlements now long gone. So maybe their haphazard placement is a hint about how the maps of old might have looked. Any idea why magic works better near the spires? The sages liken the phenomenon to heat radiating from a candle. The air is just thicker with magic the closer you get to the spire. It can be deadly trying to work spells close to a spire if you aren't wise to the effect. I'd be famous if I could tell you why this happened. I've always assumed that they are the magical equivalent of river sources. Just as water endlessly flows from certain special sites, so too are there places where magic pours endlessly from a natural source. Oh, maybe the spires themselves are the source of magic. I don't know, a lot of mystery here. Any idea who built that structure on top of the mountain spire? Why the fuck would Lantry know that? Know any sculptors with superhuman strength and the power to fly? If not, I'm out of ideas. Structurally speaking, it looks vaguely, and I do mean vaguely, similar to the sculptures in the old Academy of Tides. But if that were the case, I think we'd know more. I also noticed the resemblance, but I can assure you, if it was built by an old tidecaster, it was the best kept secret in a school that prided itself on showmanship and boasting about your exploits. Oh, so you studied the art of being insufferable? And here I thought it was a natural gift. Symbols on the structure certainly look like they could be related to the symbols found in the old walls. So I'm all but certain that structure was built by the same craftsman that built the spire. Let's speak of something else.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel...
Let's speak of other matters. That's all for now. Alright, we're finally done talking to Lantry, which is good. We're going to save the long conversation with Ebb for after we do a little bit more stuff. But, we're not ready to go. We are ready to go. Yeah, we are. He doesn't have any more tips and rumors. Or other stuff. Do I want to buy anything? Like, any armor or anything? Do I just want to chill? She gained some deflection from those. A bit from that. Those are some nice gloves. 6% precision increase. So much stuff. Animus and Saito are having quite the conversation, which I'm not really following. I don't really know what they're talking about, because they are educated and I am not. This Fatebinder of Tunon armor. % deflection gain. It's pretty nice. And it's not real expensive. Losing half a second of recovery would be nice. At least the crafting ingredients seem to be pretty cheap, so when it comes down to the crafting time, and I need this crap, I should be able to buy it, well, not real cheap, but, you know, fairly cheap. Alright, I'm not going to buy anything right now. You know what it's time for? It is actually time to go. Finally! Finally, we've done everything we need to do, and it is actually time to go see Tunon. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. We're gonna go see Tunon. We're gonna go... I don't know what I'm doing. Why does she have so many weapons? Why? They're all fine. Alright, fine. It doesn't matter. Yes, there are two options. There's two places I can go, Nox. But I want to go see Tunon first. Before I go to the Spire. So. There's exactly two places I can go. Besides my different places here at the base. I can go exactly two places right now. Everything else is locked off or hasn't appeared on the map yet. I can go to Lethian's Crossing, or I can go to the Bastard City to Tunon's Court. I'm going to go to the Bastard City to Tunon's Court. When the Bastard City fell to Kairos' armies, Tunon the Adjudicator, Archon of Justice, claimed the palace for his own. Now Tunon's Court serves as the center of law and governance for the Tiers. So, we're going to go do that right now. But, it's going to be on our next episode. If you're watching the stream, I'm not done playing. I'm going to keep on playing for a while. But I do need to end this episode for my YouTube viewers. But thanks for watching. This has been Josiah Plays Tyranny.